long time since I've done a sit down. I tried to frame this somewhat better than usual. When I used to sit down like this, I would frame this at like a 28. I'm trying to do a 35 right now. Also, hopefully you don't hear all the noise outside. I think my neighbors are like moving out. Fingers crossed on that one. And I'm trying out again another audio setup because I tried to film a house tour, which didn't really work out very well because I used a lapel mic and oh my god, it was crunchy for some reason. So we're gonna try just the mic as is. And we're gonna hope for the best. And we got a very little, I'm gonna say controversial lens to talk about. So as you know at the beginning of this video, I rented this lens from Lens Rentals. Yeah, Lentils? I cannot English. I rented this lens from Lens Rentals, where I am not sponsored as much as I wish I could be. I basically have been seeing so many of these reviews popping up on my YouTube for probably the last month for some reason. No clue why. Actually, you know what? Because the 51.4 dropped, so maybe that's why this started popping up, because I was like obviously watching a lot of videos about Sony's 51.4. So, oh my god, sorry. I'm in my computer chair, and it is a computer chair on wheels plus sloped floor equals slide to the left. Anyways, this little baby, which is the Sony G50 2.5, had popped up, and I wanted to try it out. And I say this is controversial because a lot of people who've been reviewing this, or have reviewed it in the last 2 years since it's been out, basically, a lot of them came to the same point of, this is kind of a weird lens to release because it doesn't have a very good footing anywhere. It's a 2.5, which isn't terrible, but its pricing of $600 puts it above other, third-party lenses that are the same focal length, but a bigger aperture. You got like, Samyang with its 1.8 for I think like 400 or something. I'm pretty sure there's probably a Sigma that's probably around this range for less. It's just, it doesn't fit in where there's lower cost options that are probably pretty similar in optical imaging and the optics of the image, but may not have all the bells and whistles, like the aperture ring, the declicking aperture ring. You got your very nice manual focus button, AF, MF switch. Obviously not all those lower lenses are going to offer all that, but do you need it is the question. The main reason I want to try it out though is because one, it's a G lens, which means it's made of metal. Like, got a metal lens hood, metal body, metal gasket. We got some basic sealing throughout. Pretty decent focusing motor. I believe it's a linear focusing motor, similar to what's in like the GM lenses and stuff. And also that it's compact. I think that's my biggest thing, is that even though it's very expensive at $600, renting this was only $33 for 7 days. And with Lens Rentals, the renting starts the day you receive it. Thankfully not the day you order it. This is actually my last day with this lens. I have to either buy it or send it back. And that's kind of why I'm making this video, is I don't know what I want to do with this lens. So I've enjoyed it because even though it is expensive for what it is, doing some photography with this, because it's so compact, was so nice. So typically, at least recently, I bought the Tamron 20-40, which is what I've been using for video and photography. And 40 and 50 are not super far apart. And basically their apertures are the same. 2.8 versus 2.5, very, negligible difference there in terms of light capturing. But I've enjoyed shooting with this lens so much more. Mostly because it's just tiny. The Tamron's bigger. It also, to go to 40, it does shrink itself a little bit because it extends when you go to 20, but it shrinks when it goes to 40, which is nice. It's just the size is it's just lightweight, smaller size. I don't have to worry about like kind of supporting the barrel almost. I can just you know, not worry. I know that the mounts are very strong, but I still get worried. And weirdly enough, having an aperture ring was kind of nice. It was kind of nice to just do it with this hand because I could do this, and then I was able to manual focus as needed, you know, immediately onto it, which I don't normally use manual focus. But for some reason, because this lens had the option to turn it off on the lens, opposed to the camera, which I'm really terrible about button placement sometimes because I do use the viewfinder, which I find out is also controversial, as a lot of people tend to use the screen and only the screen. I'm a viewfinder girl. What I do find interesting though is the hood situation. So this is a 49 thread, and the funny thing is the threading is not on the outer edges of the lens because it has an interesting hood that basically covers the filter. So your filter can be hidden underneath your hood, which is kind of nice because some of the lenses I've used in the past and even currently, putting a filter on with the hood is sometimes a pain in the butt and it doesn't always work. Ideal world, they would, but it doesn't always work. But I did like that, so it adds a little extra protection in a way. I've also never seen a hood like this, but I kind of like it because then you can use the hood as just a lens cap in itself. So if you don't need to use the hood, you just can just keep the lens cap on there. So you don't have two separate pieces you're taking off. Because unfortunately, like a standard hood, you can't just flip it backwards like my, but that's another thing, it's like I mentioned the size. So I'm obviously shooting with my Tamron, so I can't show the difference, but where are we here? So let's put this at 28. Actually, let's put this at 50. That way it's similar. So just like seeing that difference, I should probably let me take the hoods off so you can really see that difference, because it you know, just like, you know, this is like what, 1.5 times the size maybe? It's definitely not double, it's pretty close though. But I think, I am so sorry if you hear that, they just dropped something very large on the deck. Oh my god. But anyways, yeah, look at that size difference. So the Tamron's pretty similar in this size, which is why I chose to pull this lens out. But like, having that bit of difference, it makes a difference. It just, like weight-wise in this particular case, I don't think the Tamron is that much heavier feeling compared to this and compared to this. So the weight isn't an issue, it's more so just compactness. I feel weird being out in public with a big lens, but with this compact lens, I felt a little more confident in being around people and taking pictures. I'm not sure why, I've never outgrown the weird feeling of taking pictures in public. But it's like with this little baby lens, I can be a little more, you know, incognito. I cannot English. It is hard sometimes. But I don't know, I feel a little less suspicious. Optically, I think this lens looks great. And a lot of other people have come to think that the optics are great. It's just, you know, the actual footing of this lens, just it doesn't fit in anywhere. It's great for travel photography. You know, if you want just a small little lens, you know, run and gun, go, don't have to worry about weight, don't worry about holding, still get good shots, it works. It's just expensive at $600. And for me, it's even weirder because I have my Tamron, which goes to a 40, is essentially the same aperture. The only difference is it doesn't have an aperture ring on it, doesn't have a AF MF switch. Focus hold button, not super important, like whatever. I set it to like my zebra levels because I was gonna use it for filming video and then I didn't, so like whatever. It only has a couple less things, and obviously it's a plastic build for the most part compared to basically all metal, which, you know, it just feels nicer. But my Tamron basically fills all the same needs, other than being compact. That's really all it doesn't have. So why did I want this lens? Well, I think because it kept popping up, I went into kind of like that thing a lot of YouTubers do. It's like, oh, I bought the first 5 things I saw on Instagram, or oh, I bought the first 5 things I bought on Facebook. You know, silly videos that people used to do where it's like they see this, they just said, screw it, I'll get it and test it out or buy it, whatever. This kept popping up in videos for reviews, and I'm like, I've also tried it out. Because I was watching, I think it was Gerald Undone mentioned lens rentals. Maybe it was him, might have been someone else. But someone mentioned it, and I found it on there, and I'm like, $33 for a week. Why not? Why not test it out and see if I like it? And I love it. I think because it is expensive, it's metal, it has the bells and whistles, that it gave me this excited feeling to do photography, which is silly because you can use a lower quality lens and still get beautiful images. Like there's the 51.8, which has terrible autofocus, isn't the sharpest, and is old, but it still gets you good pictures. You wouldn't want to sell them professionally, but they would still get you good pictures to, I don't know, print an 8x10 out and hang it on your wall or something. It would still give you that. If you're pixel peeping, you're gonna cry a little bit. Pixel peep on this, in comparison, you're like, oh, that's nice. And I don't have money for, you know, the G Master 1.4 or even 1.2 for that matter. And I just don't enjoy the build quality as much of the third parties. Just, it gives me a happy feeling to use this. Which is why I think I'm probably gonna end up buying this and just shipping back the case that it came in. Because you can do a keeper's quote for some lenses, assuming that the lens is eligible for it, where, because it's used, lens rentals will give you a price based on, you know, the condition of the lens you get, and also take into account your rental price to some extent. I rented for 7 days for $33. They quoted me $520 for this, took off $33. And then with tax, it puts you at like $513, I think it was. So basically my rental price almost covers, I mean, basically covers the taxes and then gives me $7 off the total price in a sense. So, you know, essentially I'd be getting this for almost 100, like if you take out taxes, I'd be getting this for $80 less than retail price, which is not bad. A lot of reviewers did mention if you could find it from maybe like 500 or under 500, it's more worth the value, because at 600, no. And I agree, this is not a $600 lens. Yes, it's a G series lens. Yes, it's gonna be better than a standard lens, like, you know, the kit lens. Honestly, it's probably on par optically with my Tamron, but this just makes me so much happier to shoot with. It still gets beautiful bokeh even at a 2.5. The focusing distance is beat by my Tamron, not by much, but it is beat by that. But it's like I can just, the focusing is so much better, because obviously if I'm doing close distance, I'm gonna use the focus wheel, and this has such nice resistance. Like it's just, you know, and then I'm one of those people that enjoys clicky noises. Just it's so pleasant, and I don't have that on the Tamron, which is why I think I get this excitement that I have these bells and whistles that I've never had on a lens before. It has amazing autofocus. Again, the Tamron's definitely on par with this lens in terms of autofocusing and this and that. So what I'm really gaining is just happiness of having an expensive lens, even though my Tamron's actually more expensive than this lens. Not by much, but it is more expensive. I think my Tamron was like $650 or something, and this is $600, so they're on par price-wise, but, you know, I think the build just, it makes me happier. It's really weird. It's gonna be really difficult to edit, honestly, because I'm just yammering, but let's like list some pros and cons real quick. So I'm probably gonna cut a lot of what I'm saying. Pros, it's compact, nice metal build, good weather sealing, great autofocus, pretty good optics, has bells and whistles, has an aperture ring, a really nice resistant focus ring for manual focusing. You got declicking if you want to do video. You can switch your autofocus type from, autofocus on and off. Simple thing. You have your focus hole, which you can customize obviously to almost anything. In my case, I have it set for zebras, which I only use for video. I don't use it for photo, but you can. And then it has an interesting hood where it kind of helps protect your protective filter. In my case, I just have a protective filter on it, but it can help protect the filter, protecting your lens. I don't know. For me, that's kind of a pro, because I kind of like that over the flower design. Like I can't, like, I don't know. It adds more to it opposed to this. Like, is that 50? Look at that difference. Cons though. It's more expensive than its competing. It's competing lenses. It doesn't have a super fast aperture. 2.5 isn't terrible, but where there's cheaper lenses that start at 1.8, it's easy to beat out. Low light, it is going to struggle a little bit just because the aperture. I guess it would be if you have big hands. This is not for you. Because there are people who have big hands. You throw gloves on there in the winter, you might want to do the focus ring. You're going to hit both. You're going to want to hit both. If you already have it at 2.5 and you're doing this, you're going to easily move it. Unless you set it to auto, there is pretty good resistance. Like, I have to really move it. So if you're doing that, you're probably not going to move it if you're doing the focusing. But if you prefer to use the aperture on the lens, you're going to end up moving it. There's not really much resistance between the apertures, even less so when you declick it, because then it's just smooth. So keep that in mind. And then I would also say that overall, there's definitely better lenses than this. Like, if you have the money, just get a G Master at that point if you really want Sony. But if you prefer Sony and want to be on a budget, so to speak, and don't mind having a not as wide aperture, this isn't a bad option. I really enjoy it. It makes in the arms. I have insurance on it that I paid for, but still. Anyways, this gives me joy. It sparks joy. Kit lens does not spark joy anymore, because it's all I had for the longest time. It does not spark joy. My Tamron does spark joy, but it makes me a little sad with how big it is when I go to shoot, because I will say, surprisingly, I do tend to shoot at 50 more than I do 40 or below. When I use my kit lens mostly for photography, I was usually on 50, or even 70 sometimes, but usually 50. For some reason, 50 just fits what I like. It's like not too narrow, but it's not too wide either. It's like, for me, it's like right in the middle. I'd also would settle on a 35, which my Tamron can do, obviously. So for me, it's like, if I use my Tamron, I'm not gonna be using 40. I'll probably be using 35 or lower. If I'm using my kit lens, it's probably because I want to get 70. But otherwise, if I only want to shoot one focal length, I'm gonna reach for the G50, you know? So I think I'm gonna leave it here. I'm gonna have a real fun time editing this because I am babbling. I'm gonna probably go make my wallet cry by purchasing this, and yeah, see you next time. Bye.